Hi everyone, and welcome to Jefferson County Spotlight here on JCTV. I'm Matt Keeney. This is the program where we talk with and highlight interesting people across our Jefferson County area who have interesting stories to tell. And with me today is Bill Lee from Arnold. How are you doing? Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, sir.
All right, and Bill, you're here today to talk with us about structural moving, and some of our viewers may be familiar with this area. They may have seen it on the news where entire buildings, are at least large portions of buildings that are intact, are moved from one area to another for various reasons. And Bill has been interested in this topic for some time now, and you're also one of the founders of the International Association of Structural Movers, and you've been involved with moving some buildings around this area in the past. And also today you're going to tell us about a building in Europe that you have done extensive research on. It's a very large and old church that was moved back in the 70s. So I guess first, if you could start off and just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in this industry.
Well, my first interest was when I was about 11, 12 years old. My dad and I moved an old chicken house away from the new chicken house, and it made it my clubhouse. That created me a early on interest into moving the structures. I had to find this clubhouse in town. But that was when I was about 11, 12 years old. When I was about near 30, 28, 30 years old, I moved a structure in Arnold, and out of the right of way of 141, then later one on Four Ridge Road, and then another one back in Arnold, which I live in now. I've been there for over 30 years. It was Art Brooks' home at the time. It was over 2,000, about 2,600 square feet, and I moved it back in, it's almost 35 years ago, a little over 30, and I've been there ever since. In the meantime, I'd gone back to school and got my bachelor's degree and received 2 courses under the direction of Dr. Art Rosser in the Industrial Arts Department on structural moving. And I attended a couple of conventions, one in Iowa and one in Nebraska, and met some gentlemen there that wanted to put a national association together. And we, along with 10 of us all told, went to Chicago and formed the National Association, which turned into the International Association of Structural Movers. This was started back in '82. '83, I went to Czechoslovakia at the time. That was behind the Iron Curtain, and to do a research for Southeast Missouri State, where I was a student at the time working on my master's, and this was a creative project in lieu of a thesis. And the church, I had learned about it previously, probably about 3 to 5 years prior, but it was after the move. And I could only find two articles. Well, I found 3 articles. One was a spinoff of the other 2 written about the church. It was little or no information, 1 and 2 page articles. And it was a very unique process that I had observed. And so I convinced the school that I should go and research the church, the moving of the church. So I went and done the project then, researched it, and on my visa and passport I had as a student. And when I got over there, because of the Cold War, I could ask questions, but those people weren't allowed to answer. So because I was editor of the organization of the magazine called the IASM, I was allowed to get a temporary press pass, and at the time I could ask questions just like Walter Cronkite. But I didn't get to do it until the last, basically a Thursday and a Friday before I left on a Monday. But the nation was kind enough to give me an interpreter with a car, and we went to various places, asked a lot of questions, and accomplished a great deal.
And this church is the Church of the Virgin Mary.
Yes, sir.
It's a very old structure,
yes.
And in many cases, buildings are moved because people want to preserve them. And so can you kind of tell us about this church in general, and why was it moved from one spot to another?
Okay, the town of Most, M-O-S-T, and near the town of Most is something like 60 to 80 miles from Prague, which is the capital of Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic today. And it's near the border of Germany. It's in between Prague and Germany. And the town was sitting on top of 87 million tons of coal. And they had, because the nation needed the coal for energy, they had to tear the town down, and the only building that they preserved was a church, and it was architecturally unique. One way, all societies are rated by their culture. Culture is rated by our arts, and our arts is in our architecture. Architecture is in the structure, and one way to preserve your culture is to move the structure, and this nation did so. In the Ministry of Culture, they decided, they developed an organization called Transferia. And Transferia moved this massive structure, a total of 12,000 ton. The building was over 10,000, and the steel that was within it was something in the nature of 12,000 ton. It is the heaviest building ever moved by mankind on wheels.
On wheels.
On wheels. It was moved on 4 sets of track, narrow gauge, high speed rail, and floated on hydraulic dollies that would pick up 500 ton within 1/25 of an inch, controlled by a Hewlett-Packard calculator. And it moved like a snail, 1 inch per minute.
So it sounds like a very time-consuming process,
Yes.
And it, obviously it takes some engineering involved, and everything
Yes.
has to be exact.
Right.
And we have some photos we've
Yeah.
been showing, and we're going to show. So can you tell us a little bit more about how intricate the process is for this church?
The church, well, I guess I better say that it was a very unique church, interior, exterior, as well as the interior. The church is very beautiful, and it is back into a functional purpose now. It's not only used as a church, it's used as a museum and also as a concert hall. And I was there visiting this year, and this was my 25th anniversary of the move, or of my visit, research, and was there at a concert conducted by a Russian choir, not a choir, but a group consisting of 8 and a conductor. The process of moving was braced, and going through the field, or going through the 3,000 feet that it was moved on a curved process, looked like a large ship. They continuously removed the pre-stressed concrete pads and placed it in front of the church along with the rail. And the high-speed narrow gauge rail was placed in front of it, so it's continually pushed by 4 hydraulic rams and then stopped by 4. 2 being used to push while 2 was being readjusted in the same position in the front. The front of the structure was where the calculator was located, and a man there was in control of the jacks with it. They would raise them up within 1/25 of an inch of variance. It's the most unique process I know of ever utilized by mankind. It is still on the records. There has been another building that has moved that's heavier on rollers, but it is the heaviest building on wheels, and it's in Guinness Book of Records. And people there, very kind and very just real nice people. And this time I went back and went to the American Embassy with a letter from the International as a contributing editor. And at the embassy, they got me, I was in touch with the lady at the embassy, got me in touch with the mayor of the city, and I had a meeting with him on a Wednesday at 10 o'clock and met with Mrs. Klitschkova at the church, and she is the curator of the church. And from there, I went to the Museum of Archives and got photographs of the town prior to the move, things of this nature. And the people are very kind and very, very generous, and we exchanged gifts. Mrs. Klitschkova still had the photo of the magazine with the photographs that I had furnished for the magazine back in '95, and she still had a copy, 13 years, and she still had a copy of the magazine in a glass case. I was thrilled with that, and then gave her some new copies of the magazine and done another interview. I had an interpreter, and met with the mayor, met with her, met with Dr. Barej in Prague at Vacislav Square. We had dinner at McDonald's.
Go all that way and eat at a McDonald's. How long did it take to move the church?
It took 30 days, a month, but it was in 4 years of process of preparation.
Wow. And it was only moved about a half mile, right?
Right, 3,000 feet. And it was completed in the 27th of October, 1975.
Now, obviously, we've touched on this, and the building, the heaviest building moved on rollers. You had referenced that. That was in China. This was the heaviest building moved on wheels.
Yes.
Obviously, projects like these are quite a bit larger than the smaller ones you might see in smaller towns, moving a house because a highway is being built or things of that nature. I guess, can you kind of just comment on how big a job was this in comparison to the rest of the industry over the years?
This is the largest in 75. There's been large buildings moved, several large ones in the United States. The tallest building that I know of was a church with a steeple. It was 225 feet, and that was in Chicago in 1893 by Mr. Schiller. There was another unique process utilized in Indianapolis, Indiana. A man by the name of Kress had moved a 7-story building and moved it and turned it while people were still working in the telephone building. It was in Indiana Telephone Company, and people were still working while it was being moved. That's very unique.
Would that be dangerous?
Well, obviously, and this took place in 1936, 37. Okay. The tallest building I know by the number of floors is a 13-story structure that is in Los Angeles, and the man moved the structure back. 8 feet of the structure was out in the path of the boulevard, so they back 30 feet. He severed 10 feet and moved 30 foot of the 13-story structure back and saved it. And that was Mr. Kress. He done that in the early 30s. Then after that, he moved this building in Indianapolis. Up to date, in 85, a friend of mine by the name of Terry Emmert from Portland, Oregon, moved the Fairmont Hotel, and it was over 2,000 ton at the time, and that's the heaviest building at the time, moved on rubber tires. After that, he moved the mega structure, but called the Spruce Goose. And that's the large airplane by, I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, Terry moved this mega structure. And a mega structure, give you an example of what we're talking about or what I'm talking about. Number 3 is the Arch in St. Louis. Number 2 would be the Golden Gate Bridge. Number 1, according to the History Channel, is Hoover Dam. And the Spruce Goose was number 5. And Terry moved that up. The more recent, Jerry Matika had the contract and worked with International Chimney, and they moved along with the engineering process by advice of Pete Friesen, moved the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse, and it was 208 feet tall. And they done that in 1999. So there's been some great things moved throughout history and throughout the 20th century, and there's this one that is moved in China is, I think it was moved just a few years ago.
2004.
2004, okay.
Yes. Well, it's a very interesting topic, to say the least, and some of the pictures we've been showing of the Church of the Virgin Mary are amazing to see that
Yes.
a group of people can get together and orchestrate such a very, intricate job like that. Now, I know you're obviously passionate about this topic, and one of the reasons is because some of these buildings are unique and there's nothing like them in the world. So instead of tearing them down, for
Correct.
progress's sake, they're preserved. So I guess, can you kind of talk about your passion for this industry? I know we had addressed that earlier before we came on the air.
Okay, I'd taken, when I went back to school in my late 30s to get a bachelor's degree, I worked with the preservation department. And one of the ways that you could move a structure is either units, pieces, or in sections. And at Southeast Missouri State, they moved a 2-story dog trot building, and they moved it in pieces. They dismantled it and moved it. Similar process is in Fulton, Missouri. It's a a structure that it was to commemorate the speech, the Iron Curtain speech by Winston Churchill, and that's in Fulton, Missouri. And they tagged and dismantled and moved from England Sir Christopher Wren Church. And that's the largest memorial for Winston Churchill, and we have that here in Missouri, in Fulton, within about a 200-mile stretch on Highway 70. You have that, as well as for Winston Churchill. Then you have the Harry Truman and Independence, and then you have Eisenhower, Dwight D. Eisenhower, and all three figures of World War II are within a 200-mile span. But anyway, the building at Fulton is an example of tagging, dismantling, and moving it as in pieces. The same as the student body did at Southeast Missouri State on a 2-story dog trot house. And an article was written about that by a man by the name of Jesse Francis, who is today the preservationist for St. Louis County. And Jesse was involved and moved at Falls Park several structures, and so that we have today at Falls Park moved structures to create a little historical village. And that is one way by which a building buildings can be preserved, is to move them. At the time of the publishing of the first magazine was 1983. The farthest building that I knew of at the time was a building that moved over 700 miles. Everett Borehave had moved it, and it's moved it, I believe, into Iowa, but he moved it 750 miles, and it was a feature in the magazine, as well as and it was a historical structure. It was a story and a half. It wasn't very wide. It was a small house, but it was moved into a historical village.
How did they move it that far? What mattered?
What he did is he took 2 large I-beams on the exterior of the structure and put cross beams underneath it, and he had a steering sector in the back end of it, a set of dollies with a hydraulic ram, 2-way ram, that would steer it as it go around the corners. And he pulled it with an ordinary international tandem axle 5th-wheel truck, with the dollies on the truck in the front and with the dollies on the back.
So they just drove this down roads?
Right down the highway. It was I think it was about 18 feet wide at the time. And it was a small house, but they wanted it into this historical village. And he crossed, I believe it was something like 3 states, corners of them, and he rode over 700 miles. And some of the articles in the newspaper said he went 750. I put it in the magazine as feature, and I put it at 700 miles. I didn't want to lie.
Well, needless to say, too, it's an expensive process, as most people might imagine. And back in '75 in Czechoslovakia, what was then Czechoslovakia, it was millions of dollars to move that church. So what do you say to the cynical people who say, why spend the money on that? Just tear it down. Progress, it happens. You can't avoid it.
Well, how much is history worth to you? And family tree. If you don't care about your father, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, I guess that's okay. But we spend thousands of dollars for a granite tombstone. Hundreds, sometimes thousands. And that's for our loved ones. And that's our history. History is more than just wars and political battles. There's history in automobiles and cars and anything of your personal interest. And one way to preserve an architectural structure, a unique structure, rather than having it torn down and it is always destroyed, then you have no record, you have no appreciation. But if it's moved, then it is preserved for mankind. So how do you place a dollar figure on that? It'd be rather difficult. I was asked that question at Southwestern Social Science Association. I may have presented a paper in Jackson that relates to house moving. And And one of the professors then asked me the same question you asked me. What's the value? It's individual. If you have no place, no value, then it has no value. But if you have an appreciation of your family, your surroundings, your culture, then you'll really preserve it. And that gives an example of what kind of a quality people that the Czech people are. They wanted to preserve their culture, their history, and they spent millions of dollars to preserve this one church. And there's a lot of churches in Europe, but they preserved it. And it is not, it isn't known within the United States. It's not known. And to give you an example of the reason I'm saying this is because at the dinner, at the function, I was over there in 83. It was back in 90 after the wall came down. I was there at Brno at the International Consumer Goods Fair and went by at Most once again to visit the church. I was invited to come to their dinner to celebrate the moving for the 20th anniversary in 95. I was the only American, and I don't think there was anybody in the Western Europe was there, and there were hundreds of people. I was invited to have dinner with the people that was involved in the moving of the church. I felt very honored. I was invited again in 90, which was a 25th reunion, and I have one of the books or magazines that I furnished the photographs for, and a lot of the gentlemen involved in it, in the moving, signed it. So it's a keepsake for me. And nobody here knows much about it. Very little. And prior to going over, I can only find 3 articles. And like I said, 3 articles, and one was a spin-off of the other 2. Mm-hmm. Somebody had read the other 2 articles and wrote an article about it. The first true photograph that I saw about it was a photograph contributed by Jackie Boucher. Jackie Boucher, I met back when I was a student at Southeast Missouri State. He was coming through to photograph Bess Truman's home and Independence after her passing, and he stayed all night with me. And he is a photographer for the National Trust, and many preservation books have got his photographs in it. And he also had photographs of the moving of the church, and it was in a book. And anyway, it was his photographs that I learned about, and I talked with Mr. Boucher about it, and I decided that I would go, and I was allowed to do that and get college credit. I spent a lot of my money, not school's money, my money, to go and research it, but it's been a treasure trove for me.
And it's obviously a topic you're passionate about, and
yes,
as I've mentioned, just a very interesting topic, the process by which these buildings are moved.
Right.
So is there anything else you'd like to add about the church or the industry in general?
The industry now has numerous associations throughout the United States. Mid-states, Iowa, North Carolina, Michigan, Minnesota. We have the International now with a nice, fine magazine, of which I've just had an article published about this topic. And there's more involvement. By having the associations, it helps people become aware of the fact that they can be moved. And it also, the association helps the house movers to gain knowledge because they learn from one another. And then they go together and do business deals together. And then they exchange dollies where that they can have enough equipment to make the job work. So the associations are very beneficial, and it helps all of us in society. And the more interest that people show and show appreciation of their architectural structures, the more that we'll hopefully move and preserve for all mankind and for the future generations.
Well, very good. Well, Bill Lee, Arnold resident, one of the founding members of the International Association of Structural Movers. Thanks so much for coming in and visiting with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And that will do it for Jefferson County Spotlight. If you have an interesting story to tell or know someone who does in the Jefferson County area, send us an email here at JCTV. That address is jctv@jeffco.edu. And I'm Matt Keeney with JCTV. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.